Thank you very much, Shamfa, for that very warm welcome to Tobago, to Mason Hall. I don't get that very often because I don't get here as often as I would like. But let me begin this evening by acknowledging in our presence some members of the leadership of this great party. With us here this evening, I see the Lady Vice Chairman, which is Camille Robinson-Regis, a Tobagonian by boat. I see the General Secretary, the hard-working Senator Foster Cummings, who is here with us this evening. But most pleasing to me this evening, ladies and gentlemen, is to sit there and see you receive the two young people that you sent to Parliament in 2015. And I say to myself, without fear of contradiction, it is only in the PNM that you could send two young people like that and watch them develop national service. Member of Parliament for Tobago West is your Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs, where she's doing very well. And the member for Tobago East is probably one of the hardest working Tobago MPs ever. I was particularly pleased as I got to know her after she was elected. And she was given the responsibility of gender affairs in the office of the Prime Minister. Because as Prime Minister, I took responsibility for that kind of very sensitive issue which had to have the direct involvement at the top in the cabinet. And she was in Trinidad doing that work, looking after the children of the country who require the state's protection, getting the infrastructure built and so on. But then I saw the energy and the capability that she had. And I asked her to stand in for me at the Tobago office, because I don't know how many of you know that the Prime Minister has an office in Tobago. You don't even know that. I have an office in Scarborough. I come here once in a while. But that office is occupied on an ongoing basis and operated by the Member of Parliament for Tobago East, the Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister. And as a minister operating and based in Tobago, but coming to Trinidad, whenever she's in Trinidad, if the cabinet is in session, she joins us in the cabinet. If she's not in Trinidad, well, then she would miss those meetings. And she gives Tobago her #1 priority. And that is why she could come here tonight and outline that kind of development program driven by the Member of Parliament for Tobago East on behalf of the people of Tobago East and Tobago in general. I want to apologize to you all for not coming here at the last meeting when it was advertised. It was all my intention to be here with you on that occasion, and you had made your preparations, and I had to cancel because there were other more important and urgent matters requiring my attention in New York and in Uruguay. But tonight I want to thank you all for coming out, especially on a night like this when there's pan judging taking place and you could still fill this hall, because I know many of you would have been involved in the steel band judging. But you did come out here to take part in our PNM event, and I'm very grateful that you've done so. And I want to acknowledge the tens of thousands of persons who are looking or listening on the media, because we are broadcasting this meeting live. So I've come a few days late, but I've done what I wanted to do. Yesterday I went out with a team from UDCOT. And you may recall, because sometimes when in Tobago, you all are so happy that you don't pay attention to what's going on in the country. But it is your business and you must pay attention, even if you're happy. The portfolio that I run, Prime Minister's office, I've taken into that office the Urban Development Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago, UDCOT. And the main reason for doing that is that UDCOT has become the major executing vessel, project management in particular, for the government of Trinidad and Tobago in its development programs. And of course, by extension, the Tobago House of Assembly has been using UDCOT to execute some of its development programs. So as minister responsible for UDCOT, I also have as my prime ministerial duty, additionally, I have the responsibility for the UDCOT portfolio. And that is why I came over here on Monday to be taken around by UDCOT, so I could see for myself what progress is being made with respect to the projects that UDCOT is involved in Tobago. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that I am very pleased with the development program being executed in Tobago with UDCOT as the project management agency. And you probably would have followed the news and you would have heard that we went to Roxborough. We saw the virtually complete Roxborough Administrative Complex, where alongside the Tobago House of Assembly's expectation, because all that UDCOT is doing in Tobago, that is underway now, is being done on behalf of the Tobago House of Assembly. So there's a synergy between the central government, where UDCOT is based, and the THA, where the projects are presented, prepared, executed. So UDCOT is working as a project manager for the Tobago House of Assembly, as it does in Trinidad on other projects. And with that kind of arrangement, and with the technical skills available in UDCOT, we have been able to accelerate projects in a very satisfactory way, and that system is working very well. So the Roxborough Administrative Complex that has been hanging fire for years and years and years, I walked through it yesterday and it's ready for occupancy. The people of Roxborough, very soon, I presume there's going to be an official opening, but in that complex, the people of Roxborough will meet virtually all the basic government services that should be made available to persons who access those services on an ongoing basis. That will bring about a change in East and an improvement in the quality of life and greater satisfaction. You don't have to live in St. James or in Scarborough to get certain services. If you live in Roxborough or Delaford or Speyside, it's right there next door to you. That's what that complex will do, because you have in it virtually all the government services. We also have in Roxborough what I saw yesterday as Fort Roxborough. They built a police station in Roxborough. You all see it? I don't know who designed that, but the UDCOT was asked to build it, and UDCOT does what the THA says, and whoever designed it, they built it. It is a fort. But it's built already. We're going to make full use of it. So a brand new police station underway in Roxborough, about 3/4 finished. Very soon, Roxborough will have one of the best police stations in the country. One of the best. And I had with me the Minister of National Security, and at the end of the tour, we ended the tour. We started in Roxborough, and we ended the tour in Shervan, where there exists now and in operation. The formal opening will be done in the next few weeks or so. But at Shervan Road, the replacement for the Old Grange police station has been started and built in record time, and it is the best police station in Trinidad and Tobago. There's no other police station like it in the country on Shervan Road to serve Western Tobago. And of course, as I travel around Tobago, I traveled from Roxborough yesterday to Shervan, and today I drove myself around from Mason Hall to go down the west towards Crown Point, then around to Annesvale and around, came through the back roads and all the way through Dunvegan and so on. And I got a good feel for the state of Tobago. And you Tobagonians, let me tell you something. Not every day is the perfect day and the perfect weather. But if you don't appreciate the quality of life and the place you live in, nobody gonna appreciate it for you. I can tell you now without fear of contradiction that the people of Tobago are enjoying the best in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of where they live, how they live, what they have, and what they can do. The quality of life in Tobago is not surpassed anywhere in Trinidad. And if you don't know that, just say, I tell you so. I tell you so. But of course, you know, there are those, right, who could only see, as I saw. I saw about half a dozen potholes, but on roads that are generally well maintained. I saw your steel barnyards, about the best in the country. Our panmen in Tobago have good panyards. I saw your back roads paved and so on. I saw your health facilities. The concentration of those facilities in Tobago is the best in the country. And of course, the project I just mentioned. And of course, there are two fire stations. One where the contractor is on site in Roxborough. The contract has been awarded. And as we finish the Tobago Roxborough complex, another contractor is about to start on site already to start the Roxborough fire station. And to deal with the dense population on the western end, we can't continue to rely on the fire station at the airport because that is an emergency situation. So we are moving towards a fire station in Black Rock. And the site for that is being cleared now. So you see, what I'm trying to tell you is that contrary to the nonsense being spoken by those that have unfettered access to the media to talk foolishness, misinformation, and downright lies, your business is in good hands and Tobago is making progress. Nobody is saying to you that it's perfect, but it's very good and getting better. And this government is about fixing problems. Of course, what else you have a government to do? Either fix problems or tip for the treasury. We've chosen to fix the problems, take responsibility for them, and fix them. I had the opportunity to speak with the Secretary for Health yesterday, and she showed me the approved drawings for what we're going to build in Roxborough, called the Roxborough Health Facility. And I had to persuade her and her staff that if the place have doctors, have nurses, have all the services, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, have a maternity ward, you have beds for staying patients, it's a hospital. It might be a small one, but it's a hospital. Accident and emergency department. So very soon, we start the construction of that. And the people in Eastern Tobago furthest away from those facilities will have those facilities available to them in Roxborough. So when you leave Lance for me, you're not going to Signal Hill. When you leave Speyside, you're not going to Signal Hill. When you leave Bell Garden, the hospital down the road. That's how Eastern Tobago will be in under 2 years from today. So, Tobago East, I'm told that if we put another project in Tobago East, it will sink. But such is the charm of your MP, and such is the PNM's commitment to bringing everybody into the development of Trinidad and Tobago. And as we plan Tobago's development, we are doing so within the context of a national plan. Many of you would have heard sometime in 2015, I think it was, or early 2016, I told you all that I went to a function. It was the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Commerce, or the Manufacturers Association, TTMA. It was the Manufacturers Association annual dinner I was invited to. And at that dinner, the spokesperson who addressed the manufacturers was a certain Adam Stewart, who was the son of Butch Stewart, who are the owners of the Sandals project, the Sandals brand. They have a number of hotels across the Caribbean. I know them outside the Caribbean, but I'm not really, I didn't know the people personally. But on that night, Adam was the feature speaker. His father was there, very proud of him. He was brought and introduced to me as the opposition leader of Trinidad and Tobago. He had just made a presentation as to what sandals is and how they go about developing their brand, how they made their brand a world brand, and what was the strength of the brand and what sandals does for economies from the Turks and Caicos, Bahamas, Jamaica, Antigua, Barbados, St. Lucia. That conversation at the introduction was very simple and straightforward from me as the opposition leader. Confident that we were going to put Kamla Prasad Bisesa and her friends out of government, and it will fall to the PNM to do what has to be done for this country to fix the problems. I said to those people, how come you don't have one of those destinations in Tobago? Because Tobago is as, or more than, in terms of its offerings. I said, well, we expect to be in government very soon. When we get into government, I would like you to come and look at Tobago and see if we could attract your brand to Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, that was me acting for you and the country, doing what I am supposed to do, not putting money in my pocket, not putting money in foreign bank accounts, not thieving out the treasury, but being a salesman for this country. As fate would have it, we won the election, and Mr. Stewart came as he was invited by now the Prime Minister. He came to Trinidad, we put him in the hands of the public officials. They came to Tobago by helicopter. They flew around Tobago looking to see where the sandals brand can best be located for the things that they do in Tobago. We said, okay, the Magdalena was also available, ready, done, if you want that. They said, no, that doesn't fit the sandals brand. And I don't know how many of you know what the sandals brand is. They sell exotic locations to couples. People who just got married, or want to renew their vows, or just want to go somewhere as a pair, they look for the sandals brand. It has now become a world-famous brand owned by Jamaicans. And then, of course, if they're going to get married, they bring their whole entourage with them, they bring their family and their friends and so on. But the couple stay in one hotel called the Sandals, and whoever they bring with them stay in another hotel nearby called Beaches. So there are two hotels that make the brand, the model. Sandals for the couples who don't want to be disturbed by whoever else, and then uncle, auntie, nenen, whoever else come, they're in the Beaches, and they come together for their weddings and so on and so on. This is a brand that is now extremely popular in the world. It's the highest end. It's a luxury brand. We always wanted Tobago to be at the top because Tobago is about the best in the Caribbean in terms of its natural beauty and whatever else. But most importantly, why we asked that particular brand to come here is because the strength of Sandals brand brings with it something that we have been wasting money on and something that we have failed on, and that is airlift. Every territory that has a Sandals outfit has with it very strong airlift. And if you don't believe me, ask Grenada, ask St. Lucia. Number of flights per day, double, triple, quadruple, because people are coming where the brand is. And one good thing that Tobago had going for it, Sandals has a 57% repeat. They don't want to go to the same place all the time. They go to different countries, but they go with the brand. So we were coming on as a new destination and would have been guaranteed of persons who normally go to the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos and Antigua. They knew, where's the new place? Tobago! Ladies and gentlemen, well, I made the mistake of my life to do that. Having done that, we created the environment for the whole arrangement to come to Tobago. Came to Tobago, talk as much as you like. In fact, we talked so much about this project that the opposition accused members of me and my government of being salesmen for Sandals. Just because we were telling you it was a good thing. They accused us of being salesmen. But by the same time, after they badmouthed the project and got it collapsed and Sandals withdraw, You know what the blame is? The government did not explain it properly and handle it properly when they were out there night and day, morning and evening, bad-mouthing the project and behaving as though Tobagoans are, waiting to chase them out of Tobago. Huh? There was one of them going around with a petition. She and her father enjoy Charlottesville for all their life, but now something coming to you, they're going with petition. Don't bring sandals here. Sandals will take the 2 tourists. And you, the people of Mason Hall, and all over Tobago that wanted the project, you all sat there with your fingers on your lips and let a handful of people create the environment of unwelcome and trying to convince you now is somebody else who do. Watson Duke at least took responsibility for his foolishness because he intended to prosper by that. They said God takes care of fools and little children. He thinks he did God's service by bad-mouthing the project and telling you that when he becomes chief secretary, he will bring it back. Well, that is the alternative to the PNM. And if that is the alternative to the PNM, then God help Tobago. You see, the opposition that got driven out of office for corruption, they did every single thing in this country they corrupted, accusing me now of making deal with sandals and talking about there was no procurement process. There was no procurement process. And why did we not put our advertisement outside and let other people apply and then choose one? That is the procurement process. Ladies and gentlemen, how many of you in here have a little ticker by your heart or your stomach and feeling good or your muscle and you apply it, put a hand out there and ask doctor to come and see which doctor you want to choose from? You want something for your heart, you go to a heart specialist and you want to know who is the best one. The reason why we didn't have to go anywhere else is because we had already gone somewhere else and it failed. I heard Mariano Brong on the radio explaining, because every Friday he has an assignment to go and badmouth the government. He was giving the example of how it should have been done the way they did it, forgetting that that failed. Because you see, when we built the Magdalena, they advertised for people and they got the Hilton. And we all were happy because the Hilton was the brand in Tobago. What is now the Magdalena used to be the Tobago Hilton. It failed. Failed to the point where Hilton had a small shareholding in it and they gave it up and left, just give it away back to the government because they decided that they were not in the business of investing money in the hotel plant. They were in the business of managing the hotel. So they gave it up and they left. And the reason why the Magdalena has failed, is failing now, as I speak to you now, is costing you, the taxpayer, millions of dollars to keep the Magdalena open. Instead of making money for you, it's costing you money. And the reason why it failed is because while you built the hotel rooms, there was nothing to attract airlift to Tobago, and Tobago's rooms have not been attracting sufficient airlift. The THA tried to fix that by paying airlines by the seat to bring people here. Once again, you're burning money to make money. And if the seats don't get filled, then you don't get any money. So that is the level of subsidy, unseen subsidy. And there was no direct flight between Tobago and any of the major destinations. What the Sandals brand did was to solve that problem of airlift, because the brand brings with it the airlines. It's big enough, it's classy enough, it's profitable enough for the airlines to follow it. Not what we were doing before, trying to pay people to bring seats to fill the airline seats to fill the Magdalena. So they chose the Hilton. That was a brand that did not solve our problem. So the others, the so-called, the referees, because the government is full of referees, one of the referees who was instrumental in bad-mouthing the project is doing it out of an intellectual standpoint. The government had no policy. And if the policy was known, and the policy was this, and if there was a policy, and there was a policy, Well, we didn't come into government to spend 5 years analyzing and psychoanalyzing policy. We came in to continue the development of Tobago and Trinidad the way it has been going, bar the interruptions. And let me draw to your attention tonight, because you see, I don't normally work with these things, but let me just explain to you, because you will hear them on the radio talking about no policy, and the reason why the project in Tobago failed is that the government didn't do something. This document exists. This document is called the National Tourism Policy of Trinidad and Tobago. It is dated July 24th, 2008. And let me tell you about this document. I was the Minister of Planning and Development in this country when we set about to create the Vision 2020, which wasn't a PNM vision or a PNM document. It was the plan, the roadmap, the policy-making instruments for Trinidad and Tobago. I left that ministry in 2004. In November, I was replaced by my colleague, it was 2003. I was replaced by my colleague, Camille Robinson-Regis, who is here tonight. It was under her tenure that this document was completed, a tourism policy for Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, Tobago is the biggest player in that, because everybody understands that Tobago has the biggest potential for tourism in this country. So we hired experts. And if I take you to page 7, the introduction, it says the impetus is clearly reflected as one of the goals in the Vision 2020 operation plan. You know what happened in 2010? When the government changed, the PNM came out of office and new government came in. We got a call in Balize House one day. If all you want, all you think, come for it now, because we're dumping it in the Labas. And the UNC dumped the Vision 2020, all the CDs, all the documents from Vision 2020. Even though some of their own people who were part of that program in creating that national roadmap, Botiwari, Winston Dukaran, they were involved in it because the PNM opened its arms to the whole country. But when they arrive in office, they dump all of it in the Labas. We saved a few copies. But there is, in fact, a tourism policy. And the policy is broken down in details. 1.1, the need for a national tourism policy. Next, what is tourism? Next, why tourism? 20 reasons on page 8. Why tourism? You go all the way over, and it gets to the point, says, the policy formulation process. Vision for the future, tourism vision statement, and mission statement. All of this country's preparatory work for executing tourism projects have been done. And I could tell you, if you take the phone now and call up any one of the uninformed pontificators, not one of them could tell you truthfully that they've read this document or they know about it, but they don't have to. Just talk, just say anything. Just say anything. Tonight I was amazed. Tonight I saw Nairi Alfonso on TV tonight. She is one of the players on the port who in front of the court for her personal conduct. But the media gave a conference. She on TV tonight saying, telling you the people, that they have issue, she and Harry Ragunanan, with the Galleon Passage, because they are hell-bent on creating issues about that boat. And tonight's story is that the Galleon Passage was bought for $18 million more. Hear it, eh? It was bought for $18 million more than it was valued in the international market. Ladies and gentlemen, we paid $17 million for that boat. We paid $17 million for the boat. But she and Harry on TV tonight telling you that there was some racket with the purchase of the boat and we buy it for $18 million more than it was. And look at the two of them, one in the court to answer questions on the port, the other one was suspended from the PNM for trying to implicate the Prime Minister and other members of the party in scandal. Those are the people who are directing the national conversation. And if we don't come directly to you like this and tell you what is happening to your business, you'll never know. So now, the Sandals project has left Tobago. There's no need for tears. I am very disappointed, I'm sure you are. But somebody has helped us away from that. You know, the other thing is that every project you want to do that involves the physical environment in this country, there's a group of people who think that environment means they get 10 minutes of fame somewhere and they must stop the project. We're building a road in Trinidad to open up the eastern counties into Sangre Grande. The last meeting we had in the general election campaign out in the east was in Sangre Grande. We had about 8,000 people in front of us who gave us the authority to build that road into Sangre Grande, to open up Kumana and Toko and the whole east coast of Trinidad. We have a mandate to do that. We're now doing it, and we're doing it for hundreds of millions of dollars less than it was scheduled to be done for. The contract is $220 million less. Same contract. They stop it and carry it to the Privy Council. We had to go to the Privy Council before we could build that road in to go to Sangre Grande. We were building an aluminum smelter. They stopped it. We owe the Chinese millions of dollars and we have no smelter. Right? So the minute we mention that we are going to execute what the policy says we should do and bring Tobago into the tourism stage, all hell break loose. How many of you knew that on the Buku estate, in the Golden Grove area, on that same piece of land that we're looking at there for where the Sandals project was going, that there was an approval by Angostura, who was the previous owner, for a 500-room hotel. So when Angostura applied to build a 500-room hotel there, it didn't have all them environmental problems and all this, and try as you might, telling them we are not building anything on no man's land. The press and others you can't shake that. Like a pit bull on your foot, you can't shake it off. We're not building anything on no man's land. We're building at Buku Estate and Golden Grove Estate, well away from any environment. What do? You can't. The most you could do is tell them and show them. But when you had a 500-room hotel, there was not a peep or a squeak here in Tobago. But the minute the government says we're going to have those two hotels, as I described earlier, the Sandals and the beaches, for the model that will bring people to our country, high-end tourists, to take part in the very things that we take part in Tobago. The reason why they wanted to locate it there is because the Buku Reef, the Nylon Pool, the water sports, the deep-sea fishing, the goat race on the beach, that is what they were coming to offer. The minute you mention that the government is involved, every 2x4 Tobago politician saying, nah, we can't allow the PNM to build that in Tobago, because if the PNM embark on that project in Tobago, we don't have a political chance. So they put their half-dead career in front of the interests of the people of Tobago and Trinidad and Tobago, and they make sure that they created the environment where we now don't have the project. You understand? Put themselves as more important with all kind of dotishness. Many of them talking about environment, they can't even spell the word, right? And out front, making themselves as though they speak for Tobago. And I'm telling you all this so that you will know that the next time there's a project coming your way in Tobago and you want it, open your mouth and defend it and support it. Otherwise the same thing will happen again. You know me as a politician, a geologist, a prime minister. How many of you know what my background is? My first job in Tobago was a fisheries officer. My day work was patrolling Buku Reef. When I went to university, I came back here. I spent a whole summer here training reef boat operators as to how to talk to tourists and what to show them in the sea, whether it's fish or coral or grass or whatever it is, so that they can speak intelligently to tourists. I was hired by the tourist board to do that. I spent days in the fisheries department counting the wrecks in the lagoon, in the mangrove, And when we were concerned about pollution in the Bonacord Lagoon, I spent days at the bottom of that lagoon picking up holotorians. What are you telling me about environment? As though I now suddenly become a destroyer of Tobago. And a lot of people believe that if you're uninformed or you're ill-informed and you have enough ill will, you now should be listened to. And you should determine what happens. This development and this kind of attitude in your country is not going to get us anywhere. So, the government has just approved a developer to design, to build, and to operate, with or without government participation, a marina at Cano Bay in Tobago. I want them to kill that too. As I speak to you now, the environmental impact assessment is being done. It will involve dredging. It will involve the building of a breakwater. And it is because Tobago being located where we are, just below the normal hurricane belt, we want to market Tobago as a safe place in the Caribbean for all the boat owners and boat users in the region, that during the hurricane season, the place to have your boat is in Tobago. But to get that done, you have to have an international standard marina. You don't build marinas in the sky or on the mountain, you build it by the sea. So we are going to build that there. The government will be involved because the seabed belongs to the state. We don't have the money to build it ourselves, so we're doing it with a private partnership arrangement. We went out for RFPs, it was properly evaluated. We selected an international Dutch company, and they are here to build that marina. I'm listening with my ears very clean to hear which one of them is going to come and say Tobago does not need, Tobago should not get, and that there's something in that area that we must not have a project like that. Every single Caribbean island that has any flow of tourists also has a marina, whether it is Grenada, St. Bart's, Antigua. And of course, you know, one of the objectors to this Andals project here was saying that, well, we want to change Tobago's traditional tourism. Tobago's tourism is supposed to be laid-back tourism. Well, of course, if you lay back and the world is passing you by, looking up at the sky, some people are very happy doing that. You know, little Antigua, half Tobago size, had over 1 million tourists this last year. In 2018, over 1 million tourists. How many Tobago had? How many tourists came to Tobago? How many? 24,000. 24,000 is Tobago's allocation, Tobago's success story. But Antigua, breaking record, 1-point-something million tourists on the island of Antigua. Because they have what attracts tourists. They have hotel rooms, they have festivals, they have bays, they have marinas, they have what the tourists look for. And there are people in Tobago telling you that we should not add increased number of rooms, we should not have a 800-room hotel, and la 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 la. Who are you going to listen to? You have to ensure that you know what you want, because politics is about interests. The people who are trying to prevent you from having these developments, it suits their interests to prevent them from happening. But of course, if you allow them to speak for you, and you don't speak for yourself, the cacophony sounds as though the people of Tobago don't want and don't want. I'm saying to you tonight, there is a development program in Tobago underway now like it never was before, and at the end of my term, Tobago will be a different place. One of the biggest problems you have, and it wasn't a problem created by my government, I met it there, and you Tobagonians know that. When I came into office, the Spirit and the Express, the two old boats we had bought and was using, had not been to dry dock for God knows how long. And they were operated to the point where they had to be taken out of service. When the Express came out of service, when we saw the bill to repair it, it was almost the cost of a new boat. So we decided we're going to sell it as is, where is, for those who could fix it and take it. But we're not going to spend that kind of money to repair a 20-year-old boat. And of course, when we took the other one out, we were left without. And during that period, there was great difficulty in replacement. And of course, given the level of corruption on the port, where everybody had to make something on the hiring of a boat, I, as Prime Minister, went before the Parliament and took documents before the Parliament to show that the port officers were hiding information from the port board, and advising the port board what to pay for the boat. And when we were contracted for the boat, it's only after we discover what they had done. And under this government, board appointed by this government, they were dismissed. That never happened in this country. That never happened in this country before. They were dismissed from the port. And we await the lawsuits, right? We're still waiting for the lawsuits. But of course, the only real solution as we develop Tobago is to get good new boats. But we don't have the money. So we have to find another arrangement. A fast ferry costs between 75 and 90 million US dollars. But we need two, because if you have one, then you still have the strictures. You have two, you will have a pretty good service. We, again, in my capacity as Prime Minister, I asked the Australian Prime Minister to help us. Because Australia is one of the few friends of Trinidad and Tobago where they run a budget with surplus. They don't run a deficit budget, meaning when they put the national budget up, it have extra money left because the budget has been funded, but there's more money. So they put development monies around to lend to people like us. The Australian Prime Minister, when he heard my story about Trinidad and Tobago's need to link the two islands together, he said, I will help. And in our diplomatic contacts, I ended up accepting an invitation to Australia that was extended to me before. But on that trip, we were able to see what the Australians produced. In fact, the two old boats we were using here, the Express and the Spirit, they were built in Australia. They were funded by Australian loan. And we had paid back that debt so well that we were in a good position to borrow again for new boats. So we placed the order after having the two companies compete. And they competed for the job. We evaluated it. And because we wanted the two boats in a time frame of not 3 years or 4 years, we had 1 yard. We were lucky to get a slot in 1 yard and a slot in the other yard. So we ordered two boats funded by the Australian Export Financing Corporation, the same corporation that funded the Express and the Spirit. You know what the UNC did? While we are trying to solve your problem like that, the UNC got involved with the Australian opposition and tried to get the Australian opposition to attack the Australian government for doing what I just told you. And when the Australian opposition did not take them on, they wrote the Attorney General filing complaint of concerns, giving the impression that there was something wrong in the deal, where Australia is providing an open and transparent arrangement to Trinidad and Tobago to solve one of your problems. The Attorney General told them, well, if you have any information that you think is of concern to you, we don't investigate matters of that nature. It is the police that does that. Yeah? The government under police investigation in Australia. But all of that is meant to undermine a fundamental piece of infrastructure which the PNM is buying and bringing to solve Tobago people's problem. And what galls me about all of that, they were in office for 5 years. They had the 5 largest budgets ever spent by any government in this country. And them and Watson Duke and all the mouthpiece in Tobago, all the imps in Tobago, can't ask them, what do you have to show for 5 years of UNC government in Port of Spain? What did they ever do for Tobago? Nothing. Every single thing has been left here now for this government to do, and by God we'll get it done. You who had 2 boats to put in dry dock, never put them in dry dock. And coming and talking stupidness now on the news about we pay $18 million more for the Galilean's passage. When the other 2 boats come, we're going to have 3 boats. And if they don't block the road to Toko, and they don't block the port to Toko, the Galilean's passage will be 3 years old when it sails out of Toko to Tobago, getting here in an hour and a half. That is the plan. So, brothers and sisters, that is our future in Tobago. You have 2 boats going from Scarborough to Port of Spain, and 1 going from Toko to Scarborough. Trinidad and Tobago will be linked in that way for the first time in our history. So, we have a development program. We just finished fixing the electricity supply base in Tobago. Tobago now has surplus capacity at Cove. We also are working with WASA and the THA, of course, to make sure that WASA deals with the water situation. Because in Western Tobago, where most people live in Tobago, the water supply needs upgrading. I don't know what the real problem is. I haven't been told it yet because we have been talking about desilting the Hillsborough Dam for so long that I stopped listening. But I hope that that is a project that can be executed. The Hillsborough Dam was built in the mid-20th century. There's a huge layer of silt at the bottom. We want water in the dam. It's just to dredge the dam and get the silt out so that we can store more water. I hope that we can get around to doing that as part of our development program and other water supply inputs. If that is not deemed to be adequate, and we can use the excess heat at the power station at Cove or any similar operation to do a desalination plant to ensure that there's water in Tobago all year and that you don't fluctuate between dry season and rainy season, we are going to make sure that the same way we fix your roads, your schools, your panyards, your power supply, that you get an ongoing supply of water in Tobago. But you see, there are some people in this country who know no bounds, no limits. They could go and try to undermine a purchase made in Australia. They could recruit the opposition over there. They could tell the country that the Prime Minister of Australia and the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago involved in some deal, some scandal. That kind of foolishness. But we expect that of them. But what we don't expect of them is encouraging us to destroy the state of Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, our nation is less than 7 miles from Venezuela. You in Tobago might not be too familiar with that kind of close contact. You might have seen 1 or 2 Venezuelans here in Tobago, as I have done this weekend. In Trinidad, especially in South and Southwest Trinidad, it's quite different. We always had Venezuelans coming and going through the port of Cedros and in San Fernando. But in the last 4 years in particular, Venezuela's internal politics and external forces have created in Venezuela a condition which has caused a number of Venezuelans to leave home. Now, Venezuela is not a Caribbean nation in the sense of size and numbers. Venezuela is a Caribbean nation because on the Caribbean Sea, there are 33 million people in Venezuela. 33 million. And it's a large country. They have the bad politics. They have a model, an economic model that is different to ours. But that is for them. They choose that model. When President Chavez brought that model to the people of Venezuela, he had 71% support of the people of Venezuela. That is what they choose for themselves. If the model is now failing or is made to fail, that is a matter that only Venezuelans can fix. We have studiously kept ourselves out of other people's political affairs within their border. And we have confined ourselves to the standards, the principles, and the treaties of the United Nations. We are a member of the Organization of American States. In 2017, when this Venezuela situation started to build up, the Secretary General, who's a public servant of the OAS, stayed in his office in Washington and started to attack the president of Venezuela. Now, no country, whether it's Venezuela, Bolivia, Mali, whoever it is, no country should tolerate that. And when Trinidad and Tobago saw that, we were the first country to say that the Secretary General of the OAS has misbehaved and he has created an environment that is dangerous, and therefore he should be made to demit office. Well, of course, little Trinidad and Tobago, nobody take us on. He stayed there. The situation in Venezuela got worse and worse until in 2017, the CARICOM, seeing the threat of the developing storm in Venezuela, where the politics had now completely ruptured, decided to issue a statement calling on the Venezuelan politicians to use dialogue rather than force and to talk themselves out of the situation that they were in, and that Trinidad and Tobago and CARICOM, we are prepared to help them by simply providing them with a location and a framework so that they could talk themselves and come to peace and stability in Venezuela. Some people didn't want that. Some people had other solutions. And the next thing we know, a few weeks ago, it reached the point where Venezuela broke its relations with the United States. Now, these are two different political systems, two different economic systems, two different countries, and the United States has all the military might in the world. It's the strongest military power in the history of mankind, spending more on military hardware than the next 12 countries combined. So there's no question that any of these countries here could take on the United States and expect that their military might will not be their strength. And for people like us in the Caribbean, little countries that got their independence, we, the descendants of slaves and indentured workers, we got our independence in a time of peacetime. But our independence is protected not by who have more arms or who have more food and who have more muscle. We are protected by the principles of the United Nations Charter that says non-interference, non-intervention is what countries should follow, except, of course, under extenuating circumstances where the UN comes in, and we all as the world nations can authorize the United Nations to intervene on behalf of persons who may not be able to look after themselves. And unless the UN is involved in that way to allow that intervention to take place, it is illegal. Would you believe that there are people in Trinidad and Tobago telling us as a people, Trinidad and Tobago, the CARICOM, 14 countries, all of them little island states, telling us that we must take a position that ignores our fundamental and traditional position of non-interference and non-intervention as a circumstantial position? Well, tonight I want to say to Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bissessa and her band of merry men and women, if you all had known anything about anything and you were true to your oath of office, you would never encourage the government of Trinidad and Tobago to do what you're encouraging us to do now. Because, I mean, they accuse me of all kinds of things, you know, right? Now they're accusing me of supporting Maduro. Now the only thing I know about Maduro is that he's the president of Venezuela. Trinidad and Tobago has been dealing with Venezuela for hundreds of years, back and forth. As an independent nation, we have relations with Venezuela. It matters not who is the president. We don't deal with a personality. Our sovereignty is not as a result of or to be sold to an individual. Country to country. Doesn't matter who wins the election in Trinidad or who wins it in Venezuela. Venezuela has an ongoing friendly relation with Trinidad and Tobago. So, of course, there are those who decide that whoever is president in Venezuela, I want to annul that election and put a different president in place. You could do that if you wish. But please allow me to say I am not joining you in that We are preserving our position of neutrality. We have no business in other people's business like that. And this is not Keith Rowley, you know. This is the fundamental principle of Caribbean peoples, not only Trinidad, you know. I can tell you, this is the fundamental principle that protects small states. Because if you say anybody who could do it should be allowed to do it, what is to protect St. Kitts and Nevis? What is to protect Trinidad and Tobago? What's to protect Barbados or the Maldives Islands? So all over the world, small states have a duty to ensure that the UN fundamental principle of non-interference is not squandered for political or other gains of individuals or architects. So, what shoulder am I standing on? I'm standing on the shoulder of Dr. Eric Williams. I'm standing on the shoulder of George Michael Chambers, who refused to take part in the Grenada invasion right next door to us here. I'm standing on the shoulder of Errol Barrow of Barbados, Manley of Jamaica, Bird of Antigua, Bradshaw of St. Kitts, Compton of St. Lucia. I'm standing on their shoulders. Let me read for you what Errol Barrow, our Prime Minister, a venerable Prime Minister of Barbados, what he had to say in 1983. And I'm quoting here from Errol Barrow. And the person who's writing the quotation describes Prime Minister Barrow in this way: as an indomitable advocate of Caribbean sovereignty, he fiercely opposed interference in Caribbean affairs. As opposition leader in 1983, as opposition leader in 1983, he spoke out forcefully against the United States invasion of Grenada, and he was scathing in his criticism of the Caribbean leaders who kowtowed to Washington in the hope of getting economic handouts. And to quote Mr. Barrow's specific words, he said, Mr. Seaga, he was the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Mr. Seaga thinks that the solution to Jamaica's problems is to get President Reagan to play Santa Claus. I do not believe in Santa Claus, unquote. Those are the words of Errol Barrow, standing up for the principle of non-intervention, non-interference in protection of Barbados' sovereignty. So are you surprised that when a group of Latin American countries organize themselves, and you get up one morning and Venezuela has two presidents, and they are supporting the newest president appointed to that position? And Barbados was one of the strongest voices to say, we are not voting for that. Mr. Almagra, I mentioned to you earlier on, who was throwing words for the president long time from Washington, he stayed in the office in Washington, and he, this public servant speaking for the OS, not for the countries, having not consulted the CARICOM countries, I don't know who else he consulted, but he didn't consult the Caribbean. He recognized a new president in Venezuela. So he now has put the OAS in a position where the OAS cannot take part in any mediation, because if the OAS has acknowledged and recognized a new president, what is there to talk about? And who can you talk to? But Trinidad and Tobago, standing on our principle, we can talk to any and everybody, and we have been talking to any and everybody on this matter. And that is what our sovereignty allows. We are not choir boys and choir girls for any orchestra. We take that anthem and we take that flag down, and we took the responsibility in situations like these that we will make the decision that is in the best interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and we will restore dignity. But yet you have people in the parliament Who should know better? Who should be guiding the country? Errol Barrow was the opposition leader in Barbados when he took that position. What does Trinidad and Tobago have in the opposition? A bunch of privateers who believe that by taking the current position, that they will somehow become the friends of Washington. And they will get a benefit for that. And when I call them, anyway, the bottom line is, we decided, when we saw what was going to happen, when Venezuela broke relations with the United States and gave the United States 72 hours to leave Venezuela, and based on what we knew was happening on the outside, we realized that what exists elsewhere in the world as a normal day's news had come on our doorstep. In Trinidad, it is said that there are 40,000 Venezuelans in Trinidad. And that was when they had one president. Now they have two. When they start to fight for the throne, how much Venezuelans you expect in Trinidad? So we have an interest in the matter. This is our interest. And not only us, but the rest of the Caribbean is saying that we, the people of the Caribbean, we have declared the Caribbean as a zone of peace. And whatever problem we have in this zone, it must be settled peacefully. We talked to Maduro, we talked to the Americans, the opposition in Venezuela. We try to talk to them. They are not prepared to talk to us, but if they do, we talk to them. We had a meeting set up in Washington where they asked to talk to us, and I don't know on whose instruction they eventually canceled the meeting. But we are saying to them, unless you are prepared to talk and negotiate, the alternative that you are offering is more suffering for the Venezuelan people, and these things don't normally work out very quickly and very satisfactorily. So when we saw what was happening, the CARICOM, even though 4 or 5 members of CARICOM had voted with the Lima group, when CARICOM got together in emergency meeting when the second president was put in office, those same persons in the CARICOM who had voted with the Lima group, they came home and signed on to the CARICOM position. We are going to the UN because Venezuela's problems threaten Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the CARICOM region. We went to the UN. The UN Secretary General told us, we here at the UN can only recognize and deal with the government that is seated at the General Assembly. And that government is the Maduro government. And until such time as it is properly dealt with and another country is properly seated by the mechanism that is in place to seat another government in there, you can only deal with the Maduro government. That is the position of the Secretary General of the United Nations. But in Trinidad and Tobago, the Trinidad and Tobago government is taking the same position. But what are the others saying in our country? That we supporting Maduro, and we doing this and we doing that. Your country is simply standing on the principles laid out in the United Nations Charter. So he went and he told us, your position of the use of my good office to get involved in the Venezuelan situation for your protection can only be triggered if the Venezuelans want to talk. If they don't want to talk, the UN can do nothing. They'll be left to self-determination. It is for them to decide whether they want to destroy their own country or whether they want to talk a different solution. That is their option. I see some fella from Venezuela, and the news there today have it on the headline. Somebody, I don't even know his name, so-and-so, somebody from Venezuela reject Rowley. I didn't know I was working for him. I didn't know I was a Venezuelan MP. I didn't know that the interests I have to protect and the oath of office I took was for him. I took an oath of office to defend the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And unfortunately, many of you have to listen to foolishness on our radio and our television from the ill-informed and the general pontificators Half of them don't know what they're talking about. Half of them have no sense of history, have no sense of nationhood, and no sense of dignity. But they're out there talking, right? And of course, we are doing this, according to them, for some jargon deal that we have done with Venezuela. Ladies and gentlemen, even if that folly is true, what deal did Barbados make? What deal did Mexico make? What deal did Uruguay make? What deal did Norway make? And South Africa and Grenada? And, you know, so in Trinidad and Tobago, we just have this poison chalice that we want to poison ourselves with our own elixir. We produce 4 BCF of gas, 4 billion cubic feet of gas per day. The Dragon deal is 200. Compare 4 billion with 200. We don't have it. We open the door for it if they behave themselves in such a way in Venezuela that it doesn't happen. Our opposition has been moving the same way they went to Australia to try and prevent the boats from being bought. They have been moving heaven and earth to stop this Dragon deal. From the day we mentioned it, they were on it. Now, if it doesn't come to pass, it's an opportunity we never had. But the opportunity that we try to open is for us who use the gas and Venezuelans who would sell the gas, benefiting both countries. And the only good thing about this is that whatever opposition comes to pass in Venezuela, it wouldn't be as bad as our opposition, because they will see that Trinidad is the best port to sell the gas that they can't sell now. So with all the encouragement to encourage opposition in Venezuela not to cooperate with us, the day will come when Venezuelans of all ilk will see that Trinidad and Tobago is their best exit point for the gas in Western Venezuela. But of course, you know, these people don't know what it takes to put country before self. To put country before self. And that's why we've left them. And we have gone ahead to do our development program. As I outlined for you here in Tobago, I can outline the same thing for parts of Trinidad, and we are going ahead developing this country because PNM has taken a vow at its birth to stand up for Trinidad and Tobago and to defend Trinidad and Tobago and to give the people of Trinidad and Tobago the best opportunity to realize our potential from this generation into the next generation. That's what we have done. That's what we will do. And when we do that, we will know that our next generation would have benefited from the sacrifices we make. Right now, with this Venezuelan situation, this is the most challenging foreign policy issue that we ever have been called upon to deal with. And I give you the assurance that Trinidad and Tobago will not be found wanting. Having taken the position at CARICOM and providing leadership at CARICOM on this matter, we found ourselves yoked with Uruguay and Mexico, not agreeing to the threat of force or the military intervention into Venezuela. So, we went to the UN at the start. We said we don't want intervention. We said there should be dialogue towards negotiation. And we said that the Venezuelans must be able to talk themselves out of their situation. And of course, you get the UN involved and humanitarian support can come to the Venezuelans who are now going through a very difficult period. At the meeting in Uruguay, the Uruguayan government and the Mexicans met with CARICOM first in the day. Because later in the day, the European governments who had jumped on the bandwagon and give the Venezuelan president 8 days to leave. And then the question was, after 8 days, what was going to happen? Because everybody was given an ultimatum. Venezuela was giving the US 72 hours to leave. The US was giving them time for talk done. That means time for gun come. And of course, the other one was saying 8 days. Well, after 8 days passed, we kept our track. They then say they give them 90 days to leave. But when we met in Uruguay, the Europeans came, they met with Uruguay, who by that time We had already put ourselves into that group of three called the Montevideo Mechanism: Uruguay, Mexico, and CARICOM. CARICOM is 14 countries. If you listen to the news coming from outside the metropolitan areas, you will never hear that 14 Caribbean countries are opposed to what is going on with the threat to Venezuela. What they are doing deliberately is to ignore our presence and our point of view. We don't count for nothing, right? We don't count for anything. Our point of view don't matter. Even though our countries will be impacted, ignore us completely. The Europeans came to Uruguay and they met with us after they met with the Uruguayans. But when they met with the Uruguayans, who took to the meeting our position from the mechanism in Montevideo, they came back, removing the ultimatum for elections with a date and a time, immediate elections. They agree, surprisingly, contrary to the points of view of some people in Trinidad who have access to the media, the Europeans agree that the United Nations should get involved and be the body through which relief should come to the Venezuelans. There are others who say otherwise. There are others who say feed them at the barrel of a gun. So the European nations, you're not seeing that making the news. The European nations have now come around and have taken the same position that the CARICOM started out with. We went to the United Nations, and something will only happen there if the two Venezuelan leaders agree for it to happen. Because even if it is food and medicine to be put in, the UN cannot do it unless the government in charge of the country allows it to be done. Any other approach is going to be one of violence, going to be an illegal one, and so on and so on and so on. And then, of course, we always said, if you set ultimatum, you are setting the stage for intervention and failure. So, the final position is that the Venezuelans are to talk themselves to a position where negotiations can be done under whoever. But the bottom line is, we in Trinidad and Tobago, we want to steer all of them away from a conflict that will have the effect of damaging all of us, not the least of which are the Venezuelan people and the people of the Caribbean. When we came back to Trinidad and Tobago, we come back here understanding that we are an independent nation. And there's a responsibility on us to make sure that that independence and that sovereignty means something not only to us, but to our young people. They must understand that we have a voice in the world. And we have always, on world affairs, stood up on principle. I am not surprised that our opposition is having so much difficulty because they don't know the meaning of the word principle. Imagine today, while I was here in Tobago last night, the opposition went to another meeting. Because you know what's going on in the UNC? Half of the UNC saying that the current leader and her half can't win an election. I say so too. But I'm not in the thing. So fighting that fight in her party, she declared election campaign open and started a campaign for election. Well, I can tell you right now, we are busy with the development program and the security of Trinidad and Tobago, and let them fight the election by themselves. The time will come for elections. But what shocked me last night is that the biggest point that came out of last night's meeting of the UNC is that Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bissessa accused the PNM. We're not involved in any bantering with them, but they accused the PNM of operating the country based on race. So as you resort to race, you think the people so stupid they wouldn't see it. You blame the PNM who is not even in the ring with you. We're not even in the guile with you. It's you alone out there campaigning for election. And I asked Kamla, is that you? Because I remember, as opposition leader, I accepted an invitation to Diwali Nagar, and Kamla Prasad Bisesa and her UNC cronies refused to attend the Nagar because I was invited to it. And have the gall now to come on a platform in this country to use race as some political decider. And worse than that, she is now suddenly the defender of black people in Trinidad and Tobago, of African people. She suddenly discovered that the slave master didn't give us nothing when they put us off the land, and we don't have any land. And she's going to make sure that black people get land in Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm simply responding to what has been put on the table as the politics of this country. She, for 5 years, oversaw land distribution in Caroni. She must tell us how much of that land she gave African people. She had, and Munilal, created a program called Land for the Landless and gave out land to their constituents only. Not a soul in Diego Martin, in Port of Spain, in Tunapuna got 1 foot of that land. But some handler of hers tell her that this is an emotive issue and black people want land, so come on the platform and offer to give them land and all sins are forgiven. Kamla, we will never forget you. Many of you know that there are some conversations that we in this country avoid. I always tell you, I was well brought up. I work hard. I'm a proud black man. But I live my life so that my country and my village and my children can be proud of me. But you know, there's this stereotype about black people, black man, and it's that you are driven only by your sexual desires. And you only live for sex. That's the only thing you're interested in or good at, some of you. And I saw Kamla Prasad Bisesa and the UNC come inside the parliament, authorized by Kamla Prasad Bisesa and Munilal, and take that handsome Vanilla Aline from Roxborough and go in the parliament and accuse me and my father of rape. And I understood that for what it was. It was the stereotyping of the African male who was unfit to lead, because the campaign on the street outside is Rowley not fit. And why he's not fit? It's because he's a rapist. And Munlal had banner across his constituency in Orapuch, telling people, hide your children from Rowley. These are the same people who are coming now and pretending that this didn't happen, as though this didn't happen. So now you are supposed to forget that and go to the polls and vote them. And worse, they take taxpayers' money, pay an English company to execute strategies in this country so that black people and the children wouldn't go out to vote. They're busy in La Hokata now, offering money left, right, and center to everybody. Not to vote for them, you know, but to not vote. Because if you come out to vote, you'll vote for the PNM. So the campaign is don't vote. Well, let me say something to black people in this country now. If that is the kind of politics in Trinidad and Tobago that is so transparent, if that becomes effective and you can be encouraged not to participate in the electoral process so that somebody else could win and come and thief out the treasury again, then what you get, you take. And I'm alerting all parents in this country of all race, class, creed, or color. Encourage your children, your young people to take part in the electoral process. People have given their lives for that. People have fought wars for that. And politics is about interests. And anybody who comes to you to encourage you not to vote and not to take part because the government is giving you this and the government is giving you that, there's a role for the government and there's a role for you. And one of the most important roles you have is to choose who manages the affairs of the country, and some of them have disqualified themselves. We know exactly where they're coming from. And they don't expect us to respond in this way, but I make no apologies to anybody. This is my country, you are my people, and Trinidad and Tobago is depending on us. They must come and tell us how many $1 million they paid Cambridge Analytica to suppress the vote in Trinidad. Millions of dollars. And you know how we knew that? After they lied to us here? In the foreign investigations. Millions of dollars. I talked to you in 2 broadcasts the other day about your financial situation. I'm sure most of you who saw that program, at the end of the program, you are better educated. Every day in the parliament, they want to know how much it costs, who did the work. We'll answer all those questions. All will answer. And you know who asked me the question? Munilal. Munilal pay $250,000 to a reporter to follow him with a camera to take his picture in religious functions, in Sunsplash, everywhere, paying taxpayers' money for a man to take his picture to put it in the papers. $250,000. And coming to ask me how much it costs this government to educate you on your financial situation. So we could answer any question they ask us, because we are not in this business for ourselves. And when they have nothing to say, and they have no evidence or information of wrongdoing, they're asking questions. Asking questions because they believe that we behave the way they believe. I am not swearing for anybody in my cabinet, but I could tell you the facts are, after 40 months in government, under my guidance, there has not been a single credible allegation of corruption in the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is why tonight, I am so proud to take responsibility for these 2 young ladies that you gave me to work in the government of Trinidad and Tobago. You've given me the best, and you have to expect the best. They're developing well. I have a responsibility as the longest serving parliamentarian in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago today, and leader of the government and leader of this party, to ensure that the next generation is well nurtured, and these are my 2 colleagues in whom I'm well proud. Tobago, you have always done well, even when we didn't have much. You were always ambitious when there wasn't much to hold on to. And when you have opportunity, except with that Sandals project, that you let outsiders and others deprive you of, you hold on to opportunity. Other opportunities will come. I hope you are sufficiently alert to it and listen to who is talking to you and from what angle they are coming. Put country first. Put your interests first. Put Trinidad and Tobago first. And when you do that, under the guidance of the PNM, all you could say, when you see the outcome of that, you say, great is the PNM. Great is the PNM, and we shall prevail.